अस्सलाम वालेकुम। क्रिएटिव राइटिंग कोर्स में ये सेशन है एंजेंडरिंग क्रिएटिविटी के बारे में। क्रिएटिविटी के बारे में सबके डिफरेंट ख्याल होते हैं। सम पीपल थिंक इट्स अबाउट क्रिएटिंग ब्यूटी, सम पीपल से इट्स अबाउट क्रिएटिंग बैलेंस। कुछ लोगों का ख्याल होता है कि ये किसी प्रॉब्लम के सॉल्यूशंस निकालने का नाम है। हम वी गोइंग टू हियर मोर अबाउट दिस एंड हाउ वी कैन encourage and engender and nurture creativity within ourselves from our guest today, Faika Mansab. I'm going to invite Faika. And Faika is the author of the novel The House of Clay and Water, which was longlisted for 2 awards at the Karachi Literature Festival. इसके अलावा ये टीचिंग से भी मुंसलिक हैं और शी इज़ टीचिंग चिल्ड्रन एंड ग्रोन अप्स टू बी मोर क्रिएटिव इन देयर राइटिंग। हाउ आर यू फाइका?
वेरी वेल, थैंक यू।
तो जैसे हम बात कर रहे हैं क्रिएटिविटी के बारे में, आपके ख्याल में इज़ इट समथिंग दैट यू आर बॉर्न विद और इज़ इट समथिंग दैट कैन बी ग्रोन और हेल्प्ड टू बिकम मोर समहाउ? व्हाट डू यू थिंक?
I think let's differentiate between talent and creativity first, because talent is something that is inherent, that is something that you are born with. Creativity एक ऐसी चीज़ है जो आप माहौल से भी ले सकते हैं कि आपका माहौल अगर खूबसूरत है और आप उस खूबसूरती को आगे बढ़ाना चाहते हैं या उसको मज़ीद you want to make it better or you want to add to it, तो वो creativity, and it can be anything. I mean, beauty is relative. जो चीज़ मुझे खूबसूरत लगती है वो शायद आपको ना लगे, and so on and so forth. तो इसलिए creativity को सिर्फ ब्यूटी के साथ भी मुंसलिक नहीं हम कर सकते,
ठीक है,
because beauty for me is different than it is for you.
It's subjective.
It is.
तो आप जब लिखती हैं, what do you draw inspiration from to be creative? क्योंकि हम सब की we have so many roles that we're playing in our lives. We have practical aspects of our lives that we're doing. So how do you manage to not get caught up in that and keep your spark of creativity alive? आपकी अपनी personal practice क्या है इस हवाले से?
That is difficult. It is, because I'm a mother and I'm a wife and I'm a teacher, and then I love writing as well. So it's not something that you just do. You have to struggle to get that time out. कि आप अपने लिए वो वक्त निकाले लिखने के लिए, पढ़ने के लिए. और जब आप when you want to do something really badly, then you do take time out for it. If it means something to you, then you will take time out for that. So इसलिए एक struggle तो होती है, लेकिन आप अपने daily routine में से वो time निकाल सकते हैं, even if it's half an hour, even if it's 1 hour. आप जितना time निकाल सकते हैं वो आप निकाल के अपनी उस तख्लीकी काम को दे सकते हैं.
So basically what you're saying is, so that's slightly about discipline, है ना? Discipline के साथ
Absolutely.
आपको वो करें.
Absolutely.
अब आपने discipline से time निकाल लिया, बैठ गए, अब वो creative flow अगर आ रहा है, नहीं हो रहा, how do you sort of encourage that and make that happen? उसकी क्या कोई tips हैं या कोई?
People always think that if you're a writer, you have to be inspired. But I think inspiration comes from discipline. When you know that this is my 1 hour that I'm going to get, और इसके अलावा मुझे कोई और टाइम नहीं मिलेगा. आप अपने लैपटॉप पे बैठते हैं, आप अपने नोट पैड पेन लेके बैठ जाते हैं, then you automatically do, right? Because it's something that comes from within. Another thing, I think, ये भी शायद relative हो, but it means a lot to me to be alone when I'm writing. So अगर आपके पास, if there's a lot of noise, or if there are people around you, or if there is any kind of distraction, then you cannot be in touch with that well of creativity that is within you. You have to have that time to reflect, to think about, creativity कहाँ से आती है आपकी? It's everything that you've taken in as you were walking down the road, or when you were, sometimes when you're not thinking about being creative, that's when because it's an unconscious thing. You've picked up so many things. वो चीज़ें उस वक्त, that's the well that you dip into and you get inspiration from. So that's what it is for me.
So you need your solo time, एक फिक्स टाइम हो और उसमें सॉलिट्यूड हो, तो उसमें आप अपनी इस जो आपका जो वेल है, जो स्टोर हाउस है, उससे in touch हो कि you can dig out scenes.
I think so, yes.
Do you keep a notebook or any other things
yes.
like that? उसका
Constantly. I
tell us
always
about
have,
that.
a little notebook and a pen with me, because sometimes, because I'm a fiction writer, I write novels. There is always, a story at the back of my mind. कोई character ऐसा है. So when they're speaking, I like to write that down. And that's, the foundation of the story that I'm getting to know them when that happens. And when I write those things down, that's the foundation that I'm building for that story that will come later on, once I know them better.
And those lines can hit you at any time. That's why you need your...
Sometimes they do. You're sitting in a bus or a car or something, and, something will come to you. So it's better to write that down. It might be worthless later on. You might throw it away. But when that happens, make it a habit to write that down, because it gives you the confidence and I think the validation that a person needs, that, okay, if I'm practicing this, then maybe one day I will be a writer, I will get published.
अच्छा, आप टीचर भी हैं, क्रिएटिव राइटिंग सिखाती भी हैं, तो उसमें अब ये बताएं कि अक्सर हम लोग कंप्लेन करते हैं कि today children and even grown-ups, everyone is glued to their gadgets and devices. So, and writing when you collect all this information and put things in your notebooks, a lot of it is also observation. So how would you speak to that? कि observation का क्या role है लिखने में, और अपनी उसमें creative उसको कोई आप touch बाद में दें, but पहले observe करें, and that's where you find your stories. लेकिन अगर आप मतलब how can you practice that more?
That's an excellent question, because so often we say that writing is a lonely job. You write because you're either feeling alone or you've always... But until and unless you've spent time with people, you've lived, what are you going to write about? I read books which interest me. And what are the books that will interest me? Stories about people. What struggles they went through, what hardships they faced, what joy and happiness they got. These are the stories, these are human stories, and these are the stories that matter, and that will only happen when you spend time with people. So you're absolutely right. I think solitude and loneliness should not be confused. Solitude is something that you seek when you want to, be creative, or when you want to write. Loneliness is something that you can feel even when you're sitting in a room full of people. So when you are sitting in a room full of people and you are observing and doing things and listening is very important. These are the things that you will later on use. Gadgets ki aapne baat ki, there is a lot of contact on that as well. People are writing on forums and they're interacting. But it's the kind of interaction which is very different from real social interaction. For example, ये Facebook, Twitter पे जिस तरीके से आप आजकल बातें सुनते हैं, people can be so rude.
बिल्कुल ऐसे
वो चीज़ें आप normal face to face नहीं होता.
बिल्कुल.
So these differences you have to observe and उनको process करें खुद, and then make the decisions of your life. A writer is most visible in books. जो एक writer की जिंदगी है, जो उसका whatever they've learned, they've seen, you see that in the stories. That's why there are so many different kinds of stories, because the stories are not just about the characters that are in the book, but somehow the way that story has been seen and written, and that's because of the author.
उसमें अच्छा fiction जब लिखते हैं हम, तो उसमें characters तो ऐसे कहने को तो मन घड़त होते हैं, but a lot of times there's an autobiographical element to it also. तो उसमें अगर जैसे आपने खुद भी लिखी कहानी, उसमें कभी दिक्कत होती है कि I might be recognizable, और someone जैसे अगर हम अपने इर्द गिर्द से stories उठा रहे हैं, तो you might feel कि this might be recognizable कि ये मैंने अपनी फूफो के बारे में character बना दिया है या कोई ऐसी चीज़. So does that happen, or what's a good way to sort of put a creative cover on it?
First of all, I think let me clarify that when I said that the author is most recognizable in the story because they're writing, doesn't mean that the character is the writer.
ठीक है.
That's not what I meant. What I meant was कि जैसे एक painting है, उस painting
उसका अक्स है.
हाँ जी, एक painting में आप देखते हैं, you know, there is a style, impressionist थे, you know, cubist थे, so you know कि okay, and then you can say ये 3 famous impressionists थे, so उनकी काफी similar होंगी ना.
ठीक है.
लेकिन एक राइटर का स्टाइल, a good writer
जी.
should be recognizable. वो आप
यूनिक होगा वो
आप कहीं भी उसका पैराग्राफ पढ़ेंगे तो you can say, oh, you know, that sounds like Faulkner.
अच्छा.
That reads like Hemingway. आप Hemingway को recognize करते हैं foreign. The moment you read something by Hemingway, you know it's Hemingway. वो चीज़ मेरा मतलब था कहने
ठीक
का.
है.
So it's not that you're writing about yourself. In fact, I would advise you very strongly not to do that, because हम समझते हैं कि हमारी स्टोरी बहुत वो है, but you know, sometimes it's just your own angst, and that may not be that interesting to other people. So what you should write about is, even if it's your own story, it should be in a way that is universal.
Okay. आपने पढ़ने की बात की. आपके फेवरेट ऑथर्स और कुछ किताबों के नाम हमारे ऑडियंस के लिए, which you would say कि ये every budding writer should definitely read these for style and for, you know, just a...
Again, I think it's very subjective because everyone has their own, you know, I read everything. So I've read, there's this Czech writer I really like, Bohumil Harabel, and he's brilliant. He's a Czech writer. Carol Oates, Joyce Carol Oates, and Edith Wharton. I mean, there are so many. There are so many, off the top of my head, because, you know, there are so many that I read. I read everything. But I would like to suggest a few books which have been written on writing.
Ji, please.
So those are really good, I think, because they give you a sort of perspective on a writer's life, as well as, you know, a few tips on how to write or how to begin. One of them is by Margaret Atwood. It's called Negotiating with the Dead.
Achha.
There's one by Natalie Goldberg. It's called Writing Down the Bones. There's one by Dorothy Brand. It's called Becoming a Writer.
Achha.
There are a couple by Ursula Le Guin. One of them is Steering the Craft. You know, these are really good books that you can read about writing life. There's one by Anne Lamott called Bird by Bird. So, you know, because it's difficult to write, and taking time out and committing to writing every day, because a novel is a big task. So these are books that help you in that.
अच्छा, आपका मैं एक जब while you were talking, I was thinking of something कि जैसे हमारी जो ऑडियंस है, पाकिस्तानी ऑडियंस के लिए हम लोग ये कोर्स बनाए और उन्हीं के लिए ये हम बात करें, तो स्टोरीज सबकी अपनी होती हैं और उसमें आप अपना कोई स्पिन लगाते हैं, उसको किसी तरह से क्राफ्ट करके तैयार करते हैं. Is there something unique about Pakistani stories that makes them rich or interesting or different, or about stories from this region? जैसे कि आपने जो टर्किश ऑथर जो हैं एलिफ शफक, उनके साथ आपने काम किया, 40 Rules of Love की जो ऑथर हैं, उनका भी आपने काम देखा है. So how would you compare what Pakistani authors are doing or can do because of the region that they belong to? Is there a difference, or is it just individual?
I don't know about the difference. I mean, I think every place has its own, you know, taste and sound and color, and that is why we write and why there are so many authors. And I know everyone says this, but it's true, because I've also seen it when I went to universities and I taught. There is so much talent in Pakistan, and it is so amazing to see. And it is so heartening to see. You know, I was so happy that, you know, I went to Kinnaid and FC and a couple of others. And there was so much that the students wanted to say. They had stories to tell. And it's amazing that when you read those stories, and there is, you know, every voice is different. So, definitely.
So the future looks bright.
Yes, alhamdulillah.
That's great. अच्छा, अभी आपने बुक का नाम दिया Bird by Bird. That made me think of the title of your book also, The House of Clay and Water. How did you come up with the name? How does that work? Is it after you've written the manuscript, before? Does it come to you with inspiration? Yeah, kaise?
I think it should become clear to you as you're writing what the title should be. For example, my book, I had titled it Kalandar because it's a lot of Sufism involved in it. But my supervisor suggested that it's not a name that will be relatable to audience abroad. So maybe think of a couple of others. And so I was reading Rumi, and this is one half of a verse.
Acha. Okay.
Yes, it's from Rumi. In this house of clay and water, my heart lies waste without you. So yeah, it's and then I thought, okay, if I can't have Kalandar, I have to have Rumi. So you
have these checks on your creativity in a way because you have to think of your audience also. जैसे आपकी supervisor ने कहा कि वो कैसे समझेंगे.
Well, I mean, for an author, it's difficult to think that way because you're just writing and it's your story and it's the book. But people who are going to be making that book into a product, because when it's published, it's a product. So that's when these things come about. But the author should just think of the story and the title that they want to give it. They should not be thinking about the audience or whether or not it's relatable.
While writing.
It should come later once it's finished.
Thank you very much, Faika. This was all very good advice, and I'm sure our audience will greatly benefit from it. And we hope to see you next time. Thank you so much.